Hello and welcome to my second podcast. And I have a very special guest today, Dan Hoffman. And you are in New York right now, is that right?
That's right.
That's wonderful. Before I tell the audience who you are, do you want to better just keep it for us and tell us a little bit what you're doing? Because you have a lot of books in the background and it kind of reveals the secret of what is your profession.
Well, I am. It's a tough question, actually. It's not easy to answer, but I'll try. I guess I'm referred to what some people refer to as a script doctor. I actually call myself a screenplay analyst, but it comes down to the same thing. I'm a kind of person who production companies and film studios, major and minor studios, television companies reach out to if they have problems with a script, and they maybe sometimes they know what the problem is. Sometimes they just know that there are problems, but they just don't know how to fix it. And so they reach out to me, and that's basically what I do. I fix scripts.
Yeah, and I heard from all sorts of corners that you're really good in it. So I'm so happy that you made a time to talk to me, and
Sure.
I feel very honored. Okay, I have a lot of questions, but let's start with what was, because I want to know, the first script that you can remember that you ever read, or maybe it was one that you wrote yourself. Can you remember that?
Oh gosh, I mean, I read so many scripts. It's really hard to remember. But yeah, I guess when I was at film school, I went to NYU to study screenwriting. I had during that time I had two internships. One was with Focus Features, and one was with Paramount Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically started out as they put me to work right away, just reading scripts.
Wow.
And that was back in the late 1990s, and back then, that was what we today would call the era of the spec scripts, which basically means that there was a time where just basically anyone could send a script into a studio. They don't do that anymore. But so they needed a lot of people to read those scripts, and not only read them, but they needed people to read them and file a report on them. So we were asked to read a screenplay and file it's a lot of noise outside. Sorry about that. We were asked to basically read a screenplay and file like a 4 or 5 page report on the script. And so that's basically what I did for years, actually, for Paramount and Focus Feature. And there was a lot of scripts. I had this, they gave me like this very, very small office, which was like basically like a phone booth kind of office. Mm-hmm. And we had scripts stacked from floor to ceiling, and every week more would come in. So I can't remember the specific script that might have been the first one I read, but during that period I read at least 5,000 or 6,000 screenplays.
That's incredible, Dan. That's really incredible. I just see you sitting there and then all the scripts around you. What was your passion about scripts? Like, how did you come to script writing or actually analyzing?
I don't think I never really started out with a passion for analyzing it, because I wanted to become a screenwriter. That was my basic training. That's what I went to film school for. I'm actually a screenwriter. And so I wanted to write myself, and I still do. So basically that was my entry, to that world. And I guess by chance or coincidence almost, stumbled into this world of script doctoring, because there's so many scripts out there, and they're all flawed. They all have problems within them, and they need somebody to fix them. I mean, the usual Hollywood way of dealing with that is basically just to fire the writer and hire somebody to rewrite it. But as the years, they still do that to a huge extent.
That's cruel, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's a very un-European way, but actually, if you've ever seen an American movie poster, you would have noticed that you usually have like 2 or 3 screenwriters
Yeah.
created with the movie.
Yeah.
And what most people don't realize is that those people never met each other. I mean, that's just the way Hollywood works. They hire a screenwriter to write a screen, and then they don't like the direction it's going in, so they fire the person, they hire another one. So at the end, they both get to be on the poster, but they never met each other. They never worked together on the project. So I guess, I mean, a lot of production companies do that, but still, in an increasing way, I would say that companies also tend to hire, if they have a script, I mean, they have a screenwriter they don't want to fire for whatever reason, because they, because that screenwriter has a name, they made out of name for themselves, or then they would hire someone like me to fix the script, rather than hiring another writer, and they still might fire the writer in the end.
Wow, yeah, it's a tough world, definitely. But then tell us maybe a little bit, like, if you're coming as a script doctor or analyzing a script, what is wrong with a script? Like, is it always the same thing and is it always different? Is it lacking of characters depth? Is it more the form? Tell us about like mistakes or things that you're conscious about.
Wow, that's a huge question, because you know, it's impossible to answer really, because every script is basically unique. It has its own problems, set of problems.
Yeah.
It can be problems with script, with the structure of the story, with characterization, with dialogue, with, I see a lot of problems with genre, how they dealing with the specific genre. With exposition and how to handle exposition, problems with all sorts of things, like turning points, twists. Do they really work as a twist? If you guess the twist, a mile away, it doesn't really work? Or you're reading a horror movie, is it really scary, or why isn't it? If you're reading a mystery, why do we know who the murderer is in Act 1? There's tons of problems.
Yeah.
It's very hard to give you a full answer, because I've seen all sorts of problems with scripts, and that's why we have rewrites. That's basically I think also people will be surprised to know that how much a script changes in between drafts.
And as a writer, you really have to have some guts, because there's a lot of deleting and killing of, I always call it sometimes because I write myself, like killing of sentences, because it's so painful sometimes, or even sections. And
actually,
getting used to it really helps.
I actually don't do much of that, because that's what I would call script editing. In the end, somebody will come over and you're like, sometimes, get rid of scenes, get rid of lines. That's really not my job at all, because that's like the last stage before it gets to production. What I'm talking about are is like really substantial rewrites.
It's the story.
Yeah, I mean, most of the projects that I worked on, you wouldn't, if I gave you the first draft and the last draft, the shooting draft, you wouldn't be able to tell it's the same movie.
That's crazy. Okay.
So that that's what we're talking about. And then historically speaking, that's always how it's been. It's I think people will be surprised, but to know how much actually changes, but during between drafts, but also for a writer is actually a good thing, because that's what makes writing so different than acting. If you're an actor, and there are many similarities between writing and acting. I always actually felt that it's my experience that actors make the best writers, and vice versa. If you are a writer with no experience in acting in any sort of way, you're probably not a very good writer.
Yeah.
I've never seen that anyway. I mean,
it's true when people write scripts and then they are actors, they just go into the character and they just say the lines as the character, you know. That's really helpful to see if it really flows and if it really touches the soul. So that's really nice. You can just switch into the character.
I mean, that's, I mean, for me, I mean, however you want to see it, I think screenwriting is, you're basically writing for actors. And, you know, if you're not doing that, you're not writing screenplays.
That's wonderful. I want to say that again. You're writing for actors. Yeah.
Of course, it's like, you know, it's like, it's not very different. Like, let's say a composer, right? If you're a composer, you're writing music for musicians, right? And if you're writing something that's impossible to play on the piano because it requires you to have 7 fingers instead of 5 on each hand,
yeah.
then you're just not up for it. You're just not writing. I mean, I don't know what you're doing. You know, it's very easy to you know, to whistle out a tune, and then, but it's silly to say that, you know, this is for a saxophone when it's out of the range for a saxophone.
Yeah.
It's in the wrong key for a saxophone. You know, the notes are placed in such a way you can never reach them with your finger. I mean, you have to know what acting is if you're writing for actors.
Yeah.
And so I even forget, I'm sorry, I forgot what your question was.
Oh, that doesn't matter. We're jumping. It was interesting. So another thing I'm always asking myself is there's so much, like you said it, you're more analyzing the script and really doing like the first touch up, and you're not editing because that's an editing. So I get confused sometimes with how many roles there can be in script writing. Like there is a script doctor, a script consultant. And then my second question is, how are we dealing with the rights? Who has the rights to the words, so to say, in the end, or to the story, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's, to answer the first question, I think first, there are a lot of people involved in a movie, and you know, it's basically, it's a kind of strange thing because you know, it's you know, people usually say, like, you know, filmmaking is teamwork, and it is. I mean, it's people who say anything else are probably have never been involved in a movie,
yeah,
in their life. But it really is. I mean, and that goes for all the phases of production, from pre-production to production to post-production. And so when we talk about script, there are a lot of people involved. It's not a one man or a one woman's job. It never has been and never will be. It's not, you know, the only one who's really in charge there is the producer. You know, and
stays and yeah,
stay, you know,
the whole
consistent person who stays with, you know, with the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if we talk about writing, you know, there's at least on a professional movie, there's at least a couple of screenwriters involved, and as I said, they might not ever meet each other.
Yeah, maybe that's even better. Do you think sometimes that's better if they don't?
Oh yeah,
even,
yes, for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. And then you have, you know, producers, you know, when you write, I mean, let me say it like this: if you're writing on a contract, if you're writing for a professional company and they put you on they gave you a contract and you're writing, at a certain stage you are expected to hand in pages every single day.
Yeah.
So each night when you've written, you hand in the scenes that you've written, and the next morning you will receive, you know, a ton of emails from which are producer assistants. If there's a script doctor or screenplay analyst involved, also notes from those people.
That's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
And if they already have especially in Europe, I would say not so much in the United States, but especially in Europe, you would also have a director involved in the project very early on. So on top of that, you also get notes from the director on each scene you write as you write them.
Yeah, yeah. Writing scripts myself, I think that's very helpful. But
yes. I mean, it can be. I won't say it. I mean, really, it can be, but it also can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you have, like, I mean, it's like, it is, I mean, for me personally, it is actually a frustrating, even though I'm part of that process. But, you know, being on the other side of the table when I'm a writer and I'm working on projects, it's actually, for me personally, it's a frustrating experience because, you know, it's like telling a joke to a person who doesn't understand jokes. You know, it's like, you know, you say three, you know, do you know this? I mean, you say like three people walk into a bar and they immediately say, what bar is it? You know, I don't know what bar it is. You don't know what bar it is? Well, finally, you know, like you get interrupted. You just want to tell the story and then they can comment on it. But, you know, being in a process where they actually interrupt you every single scene and say, you know, couldn't we change that? This, why this choice? And what about, you know, doing this instead of that? And like you have 10 voices saying different things. So that's that can be a very frustrating process. And you have to, as a professional writer, you have to learn how to deal with that.
That's very true. It feels like a raw egg or something, you know, something that's not really cooked, and then people want to just put their fingers in it, and you're like, okay, this is not even finished. But there is often a lot of time pressure, so things have to move really fast, right? So then
yes, it's
probably,
you know, it's under extreme time pressure all the time. I mean, it's you know, there's, you know, people don't, I mean, I think people don't really understand, you know, what kind of pressure we're talking about. I mean, it's if you're writing a feature film, you know, you get something like 8 weeks to write the whole thing from scratch, and 6 to 8 weeks. A standard contract is 6 to 8 weeks.
That's really incredible how people can manage that. Yeah.
And then they have to, you know, sometimes included in that time frame is you have to do rewrites.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's another contract, you know, but it's, you know, have to work fast, and especially if you are talking about not all but certain, let's say big time production, like huge budget productions. It's very frustrating because as soon as you have, let's say, a first draft, or what we call a locked draft, then you know, they start casting the movie, they start finding locations for it, they start designing sets, props, costumes, and then you know, and the script is not finished, and you have like, you know, 4 weeks before the first day of shooting, so you just have to make it before that.
They basically don't sleep really.
No,
sounds like it. Yeah.
And it requires, you know, what it really, I think, really requires is professionalism. And you know, unfortunately, a lot of people that are trying to break into the industry, they just haven't gotten that part yet. They haven't reached that point yet. They think it's about creativity, and it's really not.
It's very true. Can you tell us, because you said that now, I find it so interesting, maybe to finish it up, and because I was thinking about what is a good script, but maybe as well as what is a good script, what makes a good script writer? And you said it, like being professional, not just about creativity. But can you give us like anything that comes to your mind just right now that you say like, hey, if a script writer has that or brings that to the table, will be super beneficial?
Yeah, that's a great question. What makes a good script writer? Wow. I wish I knew. No, I think it's actually, you know, once you've been in the business for a very long time, it's very obvious, you know. Okay, let me say it in a different way, I guess. First of all, I mean, we can talk about different aspects of what makes a good writer. Let's talk about professionalism first.
Yeah, wonderful.
Professionalism is somebody, it's different things, but it's first and foremost somebody who's willing to, you know, who's open-minded and is willing to listen to criticism and apply the criticism immediately to the work. There can't be any egos there. You can't say, you know, oh, but I visioned the story different. This is not my vision of the story, or, you know, I have an artistic idea about. All those things are things that would make the art world, you know, clap their hands, but in the movie world, it would make our eyes roll. You know, it's basically, we don't have time for that. Basically, it's a very harsh world in that way. You know, the best, I mean, all the professional writers that I've worked with, they're the most pleasant people to work with, and that's their professionalism. You know, they're pleasant, and they take criticism to heart. They change it immediately. They don't have a problem with anything you say, even, you know, even the most radical changes. To say, wow, that's great. I mean, they won't say, oh, that's not my story, or, you know, that's what an amateur would say.
That's wonderful, and very close to a good actor, a professional
yeah
actor.
Yes, right. I mean, if you're an actor, you have to deal with you have to all the time, you have to deal with directors who doesn't know anything about what, you know, they don't know anything about anything, basically. You know, because you know, and you have to deal with that, you know, with lousy direction. It's like, you know,
Definitely. Definitely, yeah.
Marlon Brando, when he decided to direct his first movie, you know, he'd never directed a movie before. He gave a press conference on the release of the movie. And one of the questions he was asked was this: Mr. Brando, do you find it hard to direct yourself? Because he directed it and starred in it at the same time. Mr. Brando, do you find it hard to direct yourself? And his answer was, no, I've never tried anything else.
That's wonderful. And very true. Yeah, you got to do the work yourself. Yeah,
but basically, you know, getting back to point, you know, professional writer. I mean, you can talk about a great writer and a professional writer, two different things.
Yeah.
But a great writer is first in the movie industry is first and foremost a professional writer, somebody who can take criticism to heart and change things very quickly without any argument, or somebody who understands that it's, you know, the writer is not in the king here. You're just employed. You're just as important as anybody else in the movie. In that way, film production is kind of communistic in essence, because you're no more important than the guy who sets up the lights. Meaning that if they don't like what you do, you get fired, and somebody else get hired. You don't have a unique position. No matter who you are. Even the best and the most famous writers, even Oscar-winning artists, are fired on productions all the time. Yeah. And it's and so you have to understand that, and what it takes, you know, that you're a little cogwheel in a huge production. You don't really have, you're not the artistic director here, you're not the producer, you don't really have the right to say, I don't like this, or I don't think we should do this. Because one of my teachers always said, you know, the thing that comes closest to movie making is the army. It's actually going to war, and you don't have soldiers saying, I don't think we should attack this, you know, from that. That person just gets fired immediately. Yeah. and so there is that, and then there is, of course, what makes great writing, which is a completely different thing. For me, first and foremost, I have to say, a great writer is somebody who's always zoomed in on, always focused on touching me emotionally, which is what amateur writers unfortunately never do. They're so focused on, I have to get my story out. It's all about me, my story. It's not about the audience.
Very true, yeah.
And a professional writer only thinks about the audience and how they respond to each scene. They write scenes in order to elicit a specific emotional reaction, not just to tell their story or to placate themselves, or it's not about you, the writer. It's about the audience. Are you touching them or not? Are they feeling anything or not? If they're not, I mean, it's not a movie any longer. You're better off writing diaries for yourself. And never get published.
That's a wonderful focus point. I love it, Dan. Really. Give us one more. Give us one more before we close. One more that you can leave us with, and then I think we're all genius after this session.
It's all about. Secondly, and most equally important, I think it's important to have a unique voice. So many spec writers, most of them actually, they're sending in scripts, and they think they're great because it's just like a movie they just saw, and they might be, they might actually be right. It might be just as good as any other movie out there right now, But that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's not the solution. That is the problem. You don't want to see, I mean, why would Paramount make a movie they just made? I mean, you know, it's like, or why would they even make, let's say, something that resembles an old movie that, you know, because, you know, why would they, you know, because the problem is, I mean, the thing is, a studio, you know, they have a huge back catalog of movies they've made.
Yeah.
If they wanted to make something similar, they could just make a remake of one of their own movies, and they would be better off because the remake is at least known by, you know, millions of people, and they would already have an audience for it, you know. So it just doesn't make any sense at all to make something that's a copy of something else, or something that's, you know, you have to be so sort of like insistent on having a unique personal perspective to it. You know, it's all about taking your personal experiences and write them in a way that's universally applicable. That's what writing is.
Yeah.
You draw from your life experience, but you write it in a way that's universally applicable. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You need to open it up for everyone instead of just
right. I mean, if you feel, you know, that you're, you know, struggling with loneliness, you know, that's what E.T. is about. That's what Taxi Driver is about. But they, you know, you take something that's uniquely yourself and personal, and then you give it a sort of a form that's appealing to everybody. That's the trick, if you can even call that a trick. But, you know, it's about making personal emotions universal. Make me feel what you're feeling. But don't just expose your emotions. I don't care about your emotions.
Yeah.
Write a diary, or, you know, a blog, or, you know, whatever. I mean, it's just not relevant. I mean, I mean, it's no mystery why self-published books are not read by anyone.
It's so true.
Because, you know, although it might be interesting to read your neighbor's diary, you know, if you actually did that, after 5 pages, you realize how trite it is.
Yeah. It's so true. Yeah.
You know, and, you know, I think it comes from the, you know, I mean, we live in a time where it's, you know, we live in a mass media time, and, you know, in a social media time where everybody thinks that everything you experience is extremely relevant to everybody. And I think Facebook might give you that illusion. On a small scale, because you might get, if you're really lucky, you might get, you know, 200 likes. But that doesn't apply to the big world, because if you made that as a movie, 200 likes is nothing. You need 50 million likes, and you're not going to get that with, look at what I ate today.
Yeah. There needs to be more. Yeah, and I think that really challenges, because as you said, we're so used to the mass media way of using Facebook, and in this super, I wouldn't say simple is not the right word, because simple can be good, but yeah, in this, you know, just not really creative way. And I think it starts all here. And if I hear you talking about it, I just see someone in front of me who has a great imagination, and at the same time has a great empathy, and can really sense people. But you gotta go far out in the mind, and you gotta create stories there. And I think some people are just a little bit lazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a huge problem, I think, for, you know, for the industry. I mean, not for the industry, maybe, you know, we have to, if you talk about the industry there, you have to realize that there are two industries here. And one industry is, you know, the screenwriting. One industry is what I would call, you know, the spec world. Are you familiar with that term, spec scripts?
I heard it before, but maybe you can just say it again for the audience.
Okay, sure. You know, okay. So in this business, we label script. There are two. I mean, in such a way that there are two kinds of scripts in this world. Maybe more, but let's just say two. One is what we call the studio script, or the professional script, and then we have the script we call the spec script. The spec script is just, people who want to write a screenplay, they sit down, they hammer a screenplay out, they hammer out a screenplay that nobody has asked them to do. And then they try to sell it to a studio or to a production company. That's what we call a spec script. That's not how professional scripts are made, though. I mean, these people who do that are trying to enter the professional world. The actual professional world, ideas for stories and concepts are developed from within the studio. Actually, the studio executives, or any studio will have a function that they call head of development, and that's the person who actually develops the stories for the scripts. Can come up with the ideas, and what they then do is they come up with an idea for a story or a script, and then they call a writer and say, this is the story, can you write this? So that's how movies are made. They're not, I mean, there are surprisingly few scripts and movies that are made because somebody sent a script into the studio that they never asked for. I mean, they would do that once in a while, but it's staggeringly rare. I mean, right before the pandemic hit, 2019, United States produced, I think, about 7 spec scripts.
Oh, wow.
So that's it. It's 7 scripts got chosen from a population of 300 million people.
Yeah.
And they were all independent minor companies. Like a company like Paramount, Fox, Disney, they will never do spec script for any reason. But that's just the distinction. What is a spec script? So the spec script is basically a script written by a hopeful amateur who hope to write it to one day, hoping that they will sell it or it will get produced. So that's just a distinction. I don't know why did we even talk about that, but
because you want to make up the distinction between spec script and and I lost it also. Yeah. So, but it is interesting. It is super interesting to listen to you and to realize that, because I think many people don't know that.
No, but it's just like, I know that, but and it's very frustrating in a way, because a lot of people send scripts in and hope that they will sell it, and it's like
exactly. That's kind of when you're not completely in the industry and not
right. It's like, I mean, it's kind of. It's a little bit ridiculous, but because professional industries actually don't work that way. I mean, you don't send a sketch to NASA for a new space rocket. I mean, they would just laugh at it because they have their own people developing that. Maybe they will look at it. Maybe they will even hang it up on the refrigerator and have fun at it, but they won't produce it. Of course they won't.
Of course they won't, because they have the best people ever doing that. Yeah, it makes complete sense.
If there's one thing you can say about it's not like Hollywood is a town that's that's down and out, right? It's they're not short on money. If there's one thing you can say about them, is they have all the money. So why wouldn't they just hire the best writers to write anything they want them to write? And that's what they do. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
But Europe is different. I mean, I have to say, I mean, Europe is different because you have publicly funded film programs.
That's very true. Yeah.
So production companies in Europe are actually, very open towards receiving scripts from whoever has a script.
Yeah. That's what I'm realizing as well in my work right now, that there is a lot of openness towards it from production companies. That's very true. But it's just two completely different businesses, I think. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's still. I mean, it's not necessarily easier to get a script through in Europe than it is in the United States, but it's still, the process is very similar. You send a script into a production company anywhere in Europe, and they have readers that will read it, what they do is what a reader does. Actually, that might be interesting for your readers or for your listeners as well. A reader, reads a script for a studio. Actually, they have they usually put 2 or 3 readers reading the same script, and then they're asked to file a report on it. And at the end of that report, the last page of that report, the reader is asked to evaluate the script.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's like you put it, you give it a grade. you give it you get everything in it a grade. You're asked to give a grade for originality, for plot structure, for character, for dialogue, for basically for everything. And that's, you give that 4 grades. It's either, terrible or great, and anything in between. And just a note to your listener, no script has ever produced where all the things has not been valued great. And then at the last column, at the end, the bottom of the page, there'll be what we call a rating grid. And the rating grid, basically, the reader is basically asked to say, what should we do with the script? Should we pass on it, which basically just reject it? Or should we consider it? Is there like possibilities for improvement there? Is it good enough for us to basically to do all the work with actually developing this into an actual script? And lastly, should we produce it? And so, depending on what the reader will say, this report will go to an assistant producer. The assistant producer will only read the scripts where all the readers have said this is great. We should definitely.
I get it. Whoa. Okay.
Otherwise, producers don't have. Even a producer, and if the producer assistant says, "Wow, this is," I agree, this is also great, then and only then does it arrive at the producer's desk.
Yeah. Wow, that's a process.
They don't have time to read all the scripts. They don't even have time to read half the scripts. It's like they only read the script that their readers have definitely recommended.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they will read it. But they will. Most of them, the ones that I know, would start by reading the first 10 pages.
Yeah, exactly. Not even the whole thing. Yeah, right. Yeah. And then they get a sense. Yeah.
If you're not caught hooked within 10 pages, most producers will say, well, if they can't hook me on, within the first 10 minutes, what are the chances they can hook me on page 20 or page 30 or page 200 or page 10,000?
Yeah, definitely they can't. Yeah.
It's like...
Dan, that was so impactful. That was so helpful. We gotta close it. I could talk with you forever because there's so much in all the stories that are coming up, but we have to close it for now. Sure. But I want to say a big thank you for everyone watching, and from myself for all the information you gave us. And I also saw on your webpage that you give courses. Yeah. Want to just talk shortly about it?
I do courses occasionally for different film schools. There's one in Denmark where I have an upcoming course actually in television series development, because I've worked on quite a few TV shows like Walking Dead and other shows.
That's so interesting, so cool.
And so I do that, but I also actually teach privately.
Exactly, that's what I saw. Yeah.
I have a mentoring program. I take about 4 students a year, and anyone who's interested can apply. Can contact me, and I'll send them a test.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe someone got the courage. They should do that. And I have to say, I looked it up, and the price, I think I'm very grateful that you offer these things. So I think that people that are talented and maybe not famous yet can still do it.
I just do it for fun because the price is, as you said, it's like a 1-year program, and it's probably the cheapest 1-year writing program in the world. But it's also not easy to get into. But I do it, basically because I like the communication that I have with students, and
Yeah, I'm thinking of it myself. So maybe we see us again. But
I hope
for now,
so.
Yeah, for now, thank you a lot. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.